Repent. Never!
Hello, thanks for tuning in. Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist, and today I'm going to be reviewing a debate which took place in 2019 between Braxton Hunter and Matt Dillahunty. And it took place in a congregational setting, I think. So Matt was debating Braxton Hunter in front of a congregation of Christians, from what I can make out. Yeah, I'll put a link up, but there's an extremely impressive pipe organ. It's unbelievable. It really is a magnificent instrument. So yeah, it's on Trinity Radio. I think Matt's also got it on his own channel. So yeah, but before I do that, I just thought I'd just show you what I'm reading at the moment. I thought you might find it interesting. Good old David Hume. I'm going through his work and going back to antiquity with Plato and the Protagoras and Meno. So if you've got any books which you recommend, I'd be interested. Obviously, mainly books on critical thinking, atheism, philosophy. If you're a Christian and you want me to read a book on Christianity and it's written by an apologist, I'm probably not going to be that much interested in reading it. Not because I'm closed-minded, but if your sacred text doesn't convince me that God exists, then obviously it doesn't really matter what an apologist is going to say. It's not going to convince me either. I've heard all the arguments which are out there. If you've got any arguments which you've picked up from any of these books which you've read, these books written by Christians, put them below, summarize them so I can get a kind of taste of what's there, and then maybe I'll go and read. But I'm more interested in building up my skills on critical thinking, philosophy, and sort of matters related to that. Anyway, just to move on. So Braxton Hunter, not too sure who he is actually, but he spoke very well. He seemed very capable, and he's a very fluent speaker. He talks quite fast, and as many apologists have done, he spent his first 10 minutes in his opening statement rattling off one argument after another. He didn't do the intelligent design argument. In fact, he explained that he doesn't like to touch on scientific things. So, well, what's scientific about intelligent design? So I found that a bit funny. I think he did the Kalam, but his big one was on free will. But you know, the title of this debate, Does the Christian God Exist?, got me excited because, well, not too excited, but it got me interested because so often we see the debate, does God exist? Is there strong evidence for God, etc., etc.? And I've always thought that sort of lets Christians off the hook because they go to the Kalam, they go to free will, they go to the transcendental argument, teleological argument, etc. And I mean, even if any of these establish that there is a God, it doesn't establish that their God exists. So, but I was disappointed, very disappointed, because the way that the debate unfolded is that really it just turned out like any other debate on the existence of God. And so all Braxton did in his 10-minute opening statement was he spent 8 minutes rattling off one argument after the other. The main one of which was based on libertarian free will, and his sort of syllogism was that libertarian free will can only exist if a God exists. Libertarian free will does exist. There are two premises. Therefore, God exists. That's neat and tidy, isn't it? So highly debatable, of course. So that was his main one, really, I think, and that's the one that they spent quite a lot of time talking about later on, which I'll come on to. So, and then finally, after about 8 minutes of that, or 9 minutes even, he quickly shifted into Christian mode get on topic with the debate. And his argument was that, well, first of all, we know with a fair degree of confidence, historical confidence, that Jesus was crucified and that Jesus did die during that crucifixion. And he started saying, we know this is historical. Don't ask me. Don't ask Christians. Ask. And then he started listing one after the other atheist historians or scholars who accepted that Jesus did die on the cross and that it was more or less a historical fact, as close as we can get to a historical fact, in order to be very confident that it did actually happen. So he was appealing to this, and then he connected it. Well, how does that lead to Christian God existing? Because obviously, if a real bodily resurrection of Christ happened, then I suppose it means that the Christian God does exist. But, you know, even if you could prove that Jesus died, and this is something Matt came onto, on the cross, it doesn't necessarily get you to an actual bodily resurrection. But his argument was that Jesus' followers had died and been tortured, not just for a belief that Jesus had been resurrected, but because they had witnessed it, they had actually seen him, and they would only submit to that torture and those deaths for something that must have been true, in a way that the 9/11 bombers simply died in the conviction, in the belief that they would receive various rewards in Muslim paradise, whatever. But that was based on a belief, whereas Jesus' followers, they'd witnessed him die. They'd also witnessed him come back from the dead bodily. They'd touched the holes, or at least Thomas had. And that therefore this for him proved the resurrection. And if the resurrection is true, then it means that the Christian God is the God that not only does God exist, but it's a Christian God that exists. And that was it. Matt then presented 10 minutes, and it's more or less the same as what he says every time. He sets the standard. What evidence what standards do we need in order to be able to say that there is a God? And he went through his criteria. I won't go through them because obviously you've no doubt heard it many times, and I want to keep this video shorter if I can. And then in the first rebuttal, Braxton came on and said, Matt, you didn't address any of my points from my opening statement. I was really disappointed. I thought you would address something, and, you know, how are we going to have a conversation? Anyway, Matt then came on after that, and he said, I prepared an opening statement just like you. I prepared it at home, and I brought it, and I delivered it, and I had no idea what you were going to say, so it's absurd of you to accuse me of not addressing. This is the rebuttal. Now's my chance to rebut what you've said. So then he went through his rebuttal. But it didn't really start kind of getting interesting until they moved on to this thing about libertarian free will, which Braxton was asserting that obviously proves that God does exist, because only with a God could we have libertarian free will. And his idea basically is that unless there's a soul, unless there's an immaterial soul, then determinism would be true, because obviously everything would then be determined by all the atoms and all the material and everything, and we would not be able to make proper choices. We would more or less be like robots, just everything would be determined, and we couldn't have done it differently than the way that we did. But because there is libertarian free will, God exists, and that's all quite convenient. He did go a step further than that, actually, but I'll come to that in a moment. So, of course, Matt said that obviously he's merely asserting that libertarian free will is true, to which he responded, well, it's a bit more than that, because my everyday experience of life tells me that I do have libertarian free will. It seems to me very, very strongly that I do. And for you to contradict that and say that I don't, to quote Carl Sagan, is an extraordinary claim. and that you would have to back up that extraordinary claim. Well, of course, unfortunately, at that point, the whole debate ended. They ran out of time. But I'm sure that it was Matt's position that he doesn't know that there isn't libertarian free will. He doesn't know. But if there is libertarian free will, it would have to be demonstrated, not just embedded as, not just inferred from part of it, what is really a circular argument. But there was one other thing about the libertarian free will that Braxton was claiming, that in order for reason to work, and in order for us to make rational assessments, that there has to be free will. Otherwise, we wouldn't have those choices. If everything's determined, then free will can't exist. And Matt again said, "Look, you're accusing me of being a determinist, and I'm not saying I'm a determinist. I'm saying that I don't know, but all these things should be demonstrated." And then he moved on to what I thought was quite a nice little analogy, in saying that you would also have to demonstrate that if we live in a deterministic universe, that reason wouldn't work, because it doesn't necessarily follow that living in a deterministic universe that we would not still make reasonable, we would not still follow reason through its logical consequences, and that we could arrive at justified conclusions. For example, and he cited a calculator which I suppose you could say is a deterministic piece of technology, in that it's programmed and that it can only behave in one particular way. You input data into it, and it's always going to deal with that data in exactly the same way. There won't be any variation in it. There won't be any choice. The calculator doesn't have any choice. But nevertheless, the calculator follows reasonable, rational, pre-programmed steps and arrives at a correct answer. So Matt was saying that even in a deterministic universe, reason could still work and rationality can still work, and all the rules of logic could still apply and be effective, which actually I thought was quite a good argument. And that's about it, really. I thought that he rebutted him very well on that particular argument, and I've noticed that a lot of Christians are now doing their homework on presuppositionalism and the transcendental argument and the argument from free will. I think that they believe probably that this is a stick that they can beat atheists with, but I think that the way Matt goes about it is probably the right way to do it. That's about it, really. I mean, it's about 2 hours. It's quite a long time, really, for what it delivered, but it did provide me with some quite good extra insights into the free will argument and the free will debate, because I haven't really done a lot of work on free will. It's something that I need to acquaint myself with much more. That's all for now. Hope you enjoyed that, and hope that you leave some comments. I hope you subscribe. If you subscribe, it will encourage me into making more videos. And give me a like as well if you enjoyed the content. So that's all for now. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for watching this production. I do this purely out of enthusiasm for the subject, and will never ask for any contributions via Patreon or any other method. But if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, subscribing won't cost you a penny and will keep you up to date on my latest talks. Thank you.